let's get to our story here. And this is an interesting one. I found in, you know, one of my favorite outlets, OffGuardian. CJ Hopkins, "Swimming with Sharks" is the title of the article, and I'm like, okay, what do you mean? So I read about it, and he's talking about specifically the Twitter files and COVID narrative. So what's this all about? Check it. Now I did this little creative thing. This was his cover photo, and I grabbed the title and kind of laid it out, tried to get artsy with it a little bit more. So, Elon's new free speech Twitter appears to be going extremely well. Tongue in cheek. Critics of the official COVID narrative and the official Ukraine narrative, and Elon Musk himself, are still being deplatformed, censored, and defamed, but otherwise, you can tweet whatever you want. Okay, sure, if you don't want to do that, and instead you want to tweet about the systematic destabilization and radical restructuring of global society that's been carried out by the global capitalist ruling classes during the past 3 years, or the most insidious official propaganda and gaslighting campaign in human history, or if you want to tweet out about neo-Nazis in Ukraine or anything else the Emperor Ilonicus, shout out to CJ Hopkins on that one, doesn't want you to tweet about, well, not to put it in too fine a point on it, you're fucked. Fucked as in suspended or censored or deboosted or visibility filtered, as we talked about. Or maybe your account is just hidden from view behind one of these fake sensitive content warnings.
Oh, it's the worst.
Right? Exactly as it was on
everywhere.
Non-free speech Twitter.
We're fucked.
Yes. So, but whatever. That's a small price to pay for the privilege of shitposting and owning the libs, which was the whole point of the Twitter takeover in the first place, wasn't it? I.e., revenge as opposed to actual free speech.
Revenge.
Who cares if scientists and medical experts and critics of the new normal are being censored? Andrew Anglin, the neo-Nazi editor of the Daily Stormer, is back. That'll certainly stick it to those shit libs. And then there's the release of the Twitter files, which is turning into a Le Car thriller. Yes, that's right. Ilonicus the Just is releasing in-house documentation of the rogue cabal of liberal bad apples that were arbitrarily censoring conservatives, not for any systematic ideological narrative enforcement reasons, but just because, well, you know, they're liberals or leftists or cultural Marxists or whatever. I love CJ Hopkins. Fucking hilarious. I love this.
Le Car thriller sounds like the French title for like what's the Stephen King?
Yes, Macabre. The what?
Christine.
Yes.
The one with the car?
Yes, Le Car thriller. Yes.
Le Car.
Part 2, of course, published by Barry Weiss on Thursday, which we covered last week. Focused on Twitter's notorious blacklists and included screenshots and other evidence of how Twitter executives censored, deranked, and otherwise intentionally disappeared and misrepresented information and political views they didn't like, and so decided that no one should be able to read. Part 3, published by Matt last night, documented the censorship and eventual deplatforming of Donald Trump, who was the president of the United States at the time. So yeah, another nothing burger. Sure. Fortunately, as it turns out, all this censorship, defamation, intentional deception of the public, interference in the political process, and so on was the work of, you guessed it, a few bad apples. Yoel Roth, Parag Agarwal, Vijaya Gandhi, yes, I know, Vijaya, and other
shut your mouth.
Bad apples who've all been fired or exited by Emperor Ilonicus. So that's all over now, and will never happen again. Pussy. Not as long as Ilonicus reigns. So great.
Oh.
I'm glad that proof of the shenanigans that so many of us have been describing for years is finally definitively coming to light. However, eternal optimist that I am, I was hoping that the Twitter files would at least broach the subject of how the global corporatocracy and its government functionaries and the state and corporate media and global corporations like Twitter have gone more or less full-blown totalitarian and have been conducting a textbook Gleichschaltung campaign. I don't know how to pronounce that better. I'm not German, but CJ is based in Germany, imposing and enforcing ideological uniformity and systematically censoring those of us who have been questioning and challenging the official COVID narrative and that destabilization and radical restructuring of global society that I mentioned above. I want to shout out 3 people right now who don't normally get love, and I wouldn't normally talk about, but James Young, Man of Talk, Steve Poikonen, Slow News Day, Ricky Rance. Three of them who never really get talked about much at all, but have been screaming from the rooftops and have been running around and should feel very vindicated these days. And this is what CJ's been talking about. Let's not get sidetracked by all that narrative stuff, all that global capitalist totalitarianism stuff, or the countless people around the world that are dying suddenly or unexpectedly, which of course has nothing to do with multiple experimental quote unquote vaccinations that they were deceived and are coerced into submitting to. No, which Twitter and the rest of the global capitalist propaganda apparatus repeatedly assured us were safe and effective, and censored those of us who suggested they might not be, or that we might not need to vaccinate every man, woman, and child on the planet, as Dr. J, of course, famously said, and others at the Great Barrington Declaration. All that stuff is water under the bridge. The important thing is American red-blue politics, right? That and get your jabs, everyone. Your fourth, fifth. I don't even know what we're up to now. Also, okay, before I get into the Twitter files further, I needed to do the full disclosure thing. And I kind of am going to share my feelings also. Similarly, I agree with CJ on this. As I'm sure you're aware, Elon Musk has chosen to release the selected Twitter files to Matt Taibbi and now also Barry Weiss instead of, just making them public. Well, I know Matt Taibbi. We communicate occasionally. He's blurbed a few of my books. I respect him. I like him. I am seriously biased towards Matt Taibbi. I would have Matt Taibbi's babies if he let me. Dude, I love this guy. Basically, I'm in love with Matt Taibbi and would probably be creepily stalking him right now if I lived in the USA instead of here in Germany. I don't know Barry Weiss at all, but from what I can tell, she seems like a nice lady.
He's nice.
Oh my god, dude, he kills me. All right,
Bullshit.
All right.
Bullshit.
Yes. Nice.
She's fine.
She's nice too. Isn't that nice?
Bullshit. Spaghetti's fine. Hair
to,
is fine.
Tribute to George Carlin. Sorry, we're clowning around. But all right, that's my full
love
disclosure. Let's get back to
Carlin.
those Twitter files. All right. Well, according to the story, Baker, of course we know, James Baker, was doing this vetting unbeknownst to Elon, who had apparently just accidentally forgotten to fire his deputy general counsel, who he'd been aware of for at least 8 months, when he fired all those liberal bad apples. And so Elon, being totally in the dark, as it were, had absolutely no idea what Baker was doing to the Twitter files until Barry Weiss caught it and brought it to his attention. That bothers me, as in, I do not believe it. And here's a tweet. Whoops, looks like I accidentally forgot to fire the FBI guy that worked with the Clinton campaign on the Russiagate hoax and helped censor the laptop story at the issue in the Twitter files and was vetting the release of those files without my knowledge until today.
Mm-hmm. Dude, he just
Elon.
needs someone Photoshop a pinky on that photo.
Oh, Elon.
Just Photoshop that pinky here.
It goes right there.
It's like the perfect face for that.
Okay.
Just Photoshop that upside down pinky.
CJ says again, I want to be clear what I'm saying. This is CJ Hopkins from OffGuardian. I want to be clear what I'm saying. I'm not questioning Matt's or Barry's motives or methods, and certainly not their characters. If I were in their positions, I'd be doing the same thing, getting my hands on as many Twitter files as possible and reporting the story that is there to report. This is the part that I loved. They are journalists. This is what journalists do. And again, Barry Weiss is a journalist, begrudgingly, but she is a journalist, okay? She's also a successful one. They've also been around the block a few times, so I assume they're aware when they're swimming with sharks, which is, again, getting back to the name of the title of the article. If they weren't previously, they certainly are now after this fishy Baker vetting business. What I'm saying is, how can we trust what they're getting? How many files were vetted by Baker? Why was he still in a position to vet them? Who's vetting the files now that Baker's been exited? Which files have been given to Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss, and which files have not been given to them? Or has everything been given to them? The reporting they're doing is like creating a collage. They can only work with the materials they're given, and the materials they're given will determine the story, or at least limit the nature and scope of the story. Also, and notwithstanding my respect and disturbing affection for Matt, neither Matt nor Barry Weiss have been particularly interested in covering the rollout of the official COVID narrative, i.e., the most insidious propaganda and gaslighting campaign in human history, or the destabilization and
or
radical
Ukraine stuff,
restructuring
or like a lot of us on stuff
of global society that I keep mentioning in this column and have been mentioning about extensively since March of 2020. Yes.
or like a lot of Tara Reid stuff.
Yes. Yes. All of it. Yes. I don't think any of it, with the exception of Ukraine,
like
is to the
Palestine
scale,
stuff,
to the global scale that
or like
that they foisted COVID upon the entire world. Okay.
RT stuff. There's got to be a whole file on RT shit, right?
What do we, dude? We literally just talked about all of that. Like
I know. I'm just saying.
Clip. Yes. So
yes.
even if Elon had dumped the entire Twitter database on Matt and Barry, I doubt that either of them are going to be exactly chomping at the bit to report that story. And this is CJ's point. Seriously, just imagine if they did. If you think the corporate media's reaction to Matt's initial Twitter files release was brutal, and it certainly was, imagine what would happen if he and Barry told the story of Twitter's role in the new global Gleitalschung campaign about COVID. They would likely lose everything. Publishers, book deals, literary agents, colleagues, friends. They would be excommunicated from the Hall of Seriousness, cast out to the outer darkness, where the deny-listed souls of COVID-denying, conspiracy theorizing anti-vaxxers moan into the void for all eternity. Naomi Wolf, RFK Jr. I mean, we can name them.
Mm-hmm.
Because telling that story would mean documenting everything. The fabricated COVID cases and, quote, COVID death statistics, the lies about the lockdowns, the masks, Jimmy Dore would be vindicated, the vaccines, all of it. The whole new normal Megillah. Not how it's over now because the science changed, but how the whole thing was one enormous psyop, regardless of whether or how much it was intentional. Of course, thank you, Klaus. We know that it was all intentional. How much of it was manufactured with lies and propaganda from the very beginning in March of 2020? If it even started in March of 2020, I think it started in November of 2019, personally. Put yourself in Matt and Barry's position. If they tell that story, their lives will be destroyed. Go ahead, judge them if you want. I'm not interested in judgment personally. I'm interested in seeing things as they are and the way they are. Well, we have a little quandary here. A quandary regarding the Twitter files not turning out to be a limited hangout or being perceived as a limited hangout. And so in light of that little quandary...
I know you've suggested stuff.
And here
you suggested a whole list of journalists you would also like to...
Well, we could start with the Indie Media Award honorees. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So in light of this little quandary, here's a proposal for Elon. Maybe Matt or Barry or one of my high-profile right-wing readers can pass it on to him. You don't have to tell him where it came from. It's pretty simple. Here it is. Share the COVID narrative censorship Twitter files with journalists who want to tell that story. Let Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss keep telling the story they're telling, which, make no mistake, is of historic importance and is ultimately part of the larger story that the COVID narrative censorship is also part of. But share the files with other journalists who don't have as much to lose, or who are willing to lose it to report the story, or who have already lost it and don't give a shit. If you actually meant Vox Populi, Vox Dei, then how about a little Vox Populi, Elon? So good.
Mm-hmm.
If Elon is serious about coming clean, challenge, thrown down. Now it is up to you, sir, to accept it. If Elon is serious about coming clean and defending the freedom of speech and all that stuff, and not just whitewashing the company he just bought and orchestrating an elaborate limited hangout, he can prove it by offering the COVID narrative censorship Twitter files to a few other journalists who want to report that story, right now, not 2 years from now when no one cares anymore. I have a hunch he might get a few takers. I have a couple of names. Someone who's been censored off of Twitter also, an Indie Media honoree, Last American Vagabond, Ryan Christian. Indie Media Award honoree, Whitney Webb. I know she would want to tell that story. These guys at the Off Guardian. 100%. They would tell that story. A lot of
Yeah,
outlets won't. Consortium News would tell that story. Mint Press would tell that story. Yeah. Who's CJ? CJ Hopkins. Just to lay out who this guy is and how good he is. Consentfactory.org or cjhopkins.com. And as long as you can follow him on Twitter until he gets banned and censored, Consent Factory over there. He's an award-winning playwright, novelist, political satirist based in Berlin. You know, plays are published by Bloomsbury Publishing, Broadway Plays. His dystopian novel Zone 23. Okay, and all of his Consent Factory essays are published by Consent Factory Publishing, a wholly owned subsidiary of Amalgamated Content Inc., which I believe he owns. Support independent journalists like OffGuardian and CJ Hopkins. OffGuardian is a fantastic outlet. Big fan.